Hello everyone, welcome, really great to see you all today. My name is Ashley, I'm our Student Success Director here at the National Educational Equity Lab. Really excited to bring you this presentation after what you just saw about the big blur, to give you a concrete example of how college is making its way into high school across the country, and how we are blurring those lines. Before we dive in though, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Shaq to give a quick intro.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Shaquille Dunbar, or Shaq, and I'm a Student Success Manager at the National Education Equity Lab.
So at the Ed Equity Lab, our mantra is that talent is evenly distributed and opportunity is not. We're aiming to change that. We work with some of the most underserved school districts in the country, and we see from across the board that for a lot of our scholars, college is not a linear path and sometimes not even an aspiration. So our goal with our organization, by bringing actual college credit-bearing courses into these Title I high school classrooms across the country, is a mindset shift, right? And making them develop that sense of belonging. So one of our former scholars, Jonathan Blount, he's from Rockaway Collegiate High School in Queens, New York. He is the first in his family to go to college. He generally did not see that as an aspiration. He was taking an Introduction to Engineering course through Arizona State University with us. He called us one night at like 10 p.m., frantic, panicking, wanting to drop out of the course, not thinking he could do it. Our COO, who's a former teacher, actually talked him down from that, created a plan for how he could get his work in, and he ranked #1 in the course across the country when he finished. He's now a freshman at the University of Buffalo, and he has a 3.8 GPA in computer science. One of our other students, Dejan Chase, she was with us in our pilot semester in the fall of 2019. She took our flagship course, Poetry in America, through Harvard University. And she generally did not see her life beyond the reservation. She's from Gallup, New Mexico. She scored an A in that college course. Her brother encouraged her to think big, think beyond the reservation. And she's finishing up her freshman year at Columbia University right now. So our origin, like I said, is in the fall of 2019. That was our pilot semester. We launched our first course through Harvard University titled Poetry in America with Harvard professor Lisa New. Our CEO and founder, Leslie Kornfeld, has a background in civil rights and really believes that education is the civil rights issue of our time. She spent that year flying around the country, serving principals, teachers, students, and really hearing a lot about that disconnect between college and high school. So her idea was, what if we brought college directly to the doors of these Title I high schools across the country? What if we took courses from the most selective universities and brought them directly to these students? At the time, I was actually a grad student at Harvard University. That's how I met our CEO. And as a first-gen college student myself, I felt really, really compelled to work on this critical initiative. So I've been with the team ever since, and I've been really enjoying the work. But none of our work would be possible without the guidance and the thought leadership of our advisory board. So just to mention a few, we have Arnie Duncan, the former Secretary of Education. We have Wayne Frederick, the president of Howard University. We have Jenny Ricard with the Common App. And we have Bob Balfans, who you've probably all seen walking around today. So again, none of this would be possible without the thought leadership of them, and they've really been with us and guiding us since the beginning. So at a glance, our model has 5 core pillars. So the first is, again, bringing actual college courses that are credit-bearing from top colleges and universities across the country. We really emphasize working with selective universities because that increases the transferability of the credits when students are ready to matriculate to college. We want to make sure, going to our second pillar, that students have that on-the-ground support though. And so each student, when we roll out this model in schools across the country, is required to have a classroom facilitating teacher that is guiding them through this course and is embedded in a period in the school day. So they're not just asynchronously watching videos and answering quizzes and doing stuff by themselves. But again, even though it's asynchronous, to give them that real college feel, we also match each student with a university teaching fellow so that they have the opportunity to experience what are office hours, what's a lab section, what's a discussion section, and have someone guide them through that material but also have a near peer who could talk to them about college, what that process was like, and how they can start doing the application process themselves. We want to make sure that access to technology is also never a barrier for any of our students. So for any students that need a laptop or hotspot devices, we always make sure that that is provided to them. And then finally, we try to partner with some of the best-in-class college advising organizations and other pipeline partners in terms of internships or other resume building items so that students don't just see this as a one-off opportunity to get some college credits, but really as the first step in their college journey and planning that pathway early. And none of this would be possible without our consortium of college partners that we work with. So these are the current universities that we work with, and we're just really, really grateful for these universities and university leaders who have really stepped up to the plate and kind of paved the way for this education justice initiative.
All right, and so to date, we've been able to work with at least 10,000 students. As you can see, when we first started, fall of 2019, we worked with a little bit over 400, and it's projected that in 2022, we'll reach at least 6,000 students. And so when we think about schools and students in need, when we think about rural areas, cities, underserved students in Title I and Title I eligible high school, we understand the importance and the need that is out there for our students to get an opportunity to see themselves in these institutions or any institutions that they desire. And so again, we work with at least 180 high schools across 90 districts and 32 states, and more to come in the future. We're really excited about our results, and we're really happy knowing that we're a young organization. We know that at least 84% of students completing the course has passed and earned at least 3 college credits. Again, widely transferable credits, because we want to ensure that students, no matter where they are, no matter where they choose to go, can utilize these courses to get into the institution of their desire. 98% of our teachers reported an increase in college readiness and confidence, which is so important. Because whether these students actually pass the course or not, there are certain skills that are necessary for them to learn, such as deadlines, time management, the level of urgency that needs to be taken when leaving high school and entering the real world. And so there are certain skills, again, whether passing or not, we've seen our students attain just by taking these courses. 90% of students would recommend this opportunity to their peers, which is important because as a former high school teacher, there's a lot that we can say to them. We can be encouraging, we can be motivating, but it's different when your peer can tell you that, you know, I just took a class from Columbia and it's really life-changing. Or the things that I've learned in the class, I think I can use outside of the high school building. And so again, we work for students and with them, and we're happy that they report that this is an experience that they enjoy. And then the last one is 100% of our participating pilot districts ask to participate in future courses. Again, this is an urgent matter, right? We, across the nation, we have high schools that are offering various courses, APs, and all of that is great. And so we know that students are they have a desire to look for something outside of their neighborhoods and their communities. They want to know that they belong in these areas, and we're happy to say that 100% of those schools want this opportunity. And so, as mentioned earlier, these are all of the courses that we've offered today, understanding that they can lead to different careers, different opportunities. And so we have courses in the humanities, STEM, social sciences, and business. And the beautiful thing about this, again, is an exploration of career. One of the biggest questions high school students have to ask themselves when leaving high school is, what am I going to do next, right? That's always the biggest question. What's my major going to be? And if it's not a major, what career do I want to explore when I'm done? And so our courses provide that opportunity. For instance, if we look at the STEM, there is an Introduction to Cloud Computing class provided by Arizona State University in partnership with Amazon Web Services. And so we like to call that the triple enrollment, where not only do they get that dual enrollment credit from their high school, they can earn 3 college credits from Arizona State University, but then at the end of the course, they can then take a practitioner exam to get a certification, right? So there is layers to what they can explore and how they can utilize these courses to then enter the workforce or go into an institution. We also have a business course, and Ashley and I, as we mentioned, we're student success managers, but we're also course managers, which means that we help manage the course. And so I've helped with introduction to microeconomics, and for the last 2 semesters, we've had a closing ceremony to celebrate the student success. And each time, the student that gave a reflection expressed to me that, I've thought about exploring economics or marketing or business and wasn't quite sure if that was for me. And that was a course for them that affirmed the fact that, like, okay, this is something that I'm looking to do, and I don't have to risk the time or the money to see what I'm interested in, because I've had the opportunity to do it in high school. On the opposite side, a student could take Georgetown's Map of the Modern World, which is a class that allows them to explore various countries, the political things that affect those countries, the geography that may affect the people in those areas. And part of it is they have to memorize like over 200 nations. And for some students, and they all get it done. It's amazing. But for some students, that's something that may not interest them. Again, it's great to know what you may not want to do so you can take that off of your list and then start thinking about the other things that may be of interest of you. But at the end of the day, no matter what course they take, they still get to earn 3 college credits through our program. And so, again, our bread and butter right now is being able to enter these schools, provide these college courses, but as we've alluded to, there are things that they need to get exposed to in order to even be prepared to step onto campus. And so when Ashley mentioned teaching fellows, we have teaching fellows that come in and do a virtual visit, and students get the opportunity to advocate for themselves and set up office hours, understanding what that language is, whether it's with the teaching fellow or with the professors, to seek that help and guidance, right? And some of our students have expressed that they didn't even believe they were, that they deserved it, that it was something that a professor across the nation would take the time out their day, knowing that they have their own students on campus, to meet with a student that's in Gallup, New Mexico. But they're deserving of that right, and an opportunity like this shows them that it's a tool in college and that they can utilize it. We work with some of the best in class college advising. So if a student goes to a school that doesn't have the resources to walk them through the college, the Common App, or if there are scholarship opportunities that we're aware of, our students get access to that pool, and then we help walk them through the application so that they can get through and get an opportunity to maybe get that scholarship. And then at the end, career pathways. I mentioned the introduction to cloud computing, but you'll see a quote there from Asia Richardson. Last year we had a course with Harvard called Future L. And usually if you're a four-year lawyer, you're a 1L, but these students are aspiring to be lawyers, and so for a 1-month program, they get an opportunity to work with professors, lawyers, professionals in the field to see what it's like and get a sense from Harvard law students of what it's like to be a law student in present day, and ask questions about how did you get to this point? What do I need to do currently as a junior, a sophomore, a senior to be in the same position? And so we know the power in opportunities. We know the power in having a chance to see yourself in that setting. And so we're happy to say that they get some career pathways with us as well. And so here are the many faces that we've worked with. There's definitely more, like you said, but I know that for everyone sitting in this room, we work for students, and we know that everything that we do is to make sure that they have a smile on their face and they have the chance to explore any pathway that they desire. And so, again, thank you for taking the time to listen to us, Ashley and Shaq, National Education Equity Lab, and we'll take any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints. If you have
How did they schedule that with the high school? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Was your question again?
I think
And if you could say your name for me, that would be. Oh, someone else.
somewhere in the front.
Oh. Oh.
Oh, go ahead, ask. I didn't raise my hand. I was just trying to think of the scheduling of that component in the high school schedule.
Okay, yes, it's very challenging. But we have an admissions team, and they work with the high school so that we can get those, find out their schedules much early. And what we do is work with our universities, our teaching fellows, so that the teaching fellows can then go into the school, because our sessions, we like to have them within the school day, our teaching fellow sessions, because we know after school, the students that we work with have jobs, they have other responsibilities, and so we collect the schedules of the school, we work with our university partners, and we try to have our teaching fellows come in the middle of the day so that students can get a chance to learn from them in that moment rather than going after school. And so there's many layers to it, but at first we get information from the high schools and then go from there.
Yeah, I would just add to that the teaching fellow meetings are just once a week. And so generally the course is embedded in the school day. So those other days of the week in that same class period, they're meeting with their school facilitating teacher that's helping them through the program. Also want to open the floor for any questions for the JFF team as well.
We'll just work around, so sorry.
My name is Sarah, and I'm from the Seattle region, and I was just wondering, do individual students apply for this? And if so, do you find that it's kind of breaking the model of like, okay, these kids would have probably ended up going to college anyway, and really providing that full access to kids who might not have seen themselves? Like, how do you do that, manage that?
Yeah, so our model is to work directly through schools, and so for each school that we work with, it's up to the discretion of the teachers and school leaders and principals to sign up a class of students from there. But we don't let students, at least at current, sign up individually to do this, because it would go against the model of having that classroom co-teacher support.
And one thing I'll add to that is, we like to tell schools that, go with the student that if given this opportunity, would rise to the occasion. And so to your point of, are we getting students that would have already done something like this? There might be a chance, but we directly indicate to schools that give those students that maybe, just need a little push or are looking for something outside of the high school courses that they get, to take our courses so that they can see themselves in these places.
Okay.
Yes, David. So it somewhat aligns to that question, but is there eligibility criteria? Like, is there certain GPA students has to have? So it's just general.
So we have a student application that all students have to fill out, but again, we know that school leaders know their students best, and so we leave the discretion up to them. But we do have guidelines that we provide around, considering things like GPA, teacher recommendations, but again, like Shaq said, going with your gut and selecting those students that are deserving of this opportunity and might rise to the occasion and need an extra push. But they all do have to complete an application that's reviewed by our team.
Understood.
And some courses have prerequisites.
Of course. Right. The last comment I want to make is, first of all, I'm really glad to see the Ivy Leagues and more exclusive schools do things that community colleges have been doing for 30 years. But this is good. This is good because it encourages us in the community college space to say we've been doing something great for 30 years, right? But it's really good, I think, because it does for many instances. And I want to go to your point around transferability of credits. What we found in the community college space very often is that courses taught by college instructors in the high school are less transferable than courses that are taught on the campus. That's just some advice I want to give you. But because these are selective institutions, very often, just in America, we look at that and say, oh my God, this is the one we want to take. And it does create an opportunity for those students who do aspire for these sorts of institutions to get an early taste of what it's like to be in those institutions.
That's a really great point, and the one thing I'll say to that is the classroom co-teacher does not have to be certified to teach the course. So the professors from the universities are still the instructor of record, so that there is that transferability.
Great. Thank you.
Is that me?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
sorry. Amelia from National Center for Learning Disabilities, and I'm wondering how you handle students with individual education plans and ensure that their accommodations are met within this platform and model.
I know that for one of our courses, so I think Intro to Microeconomics, if a student had an IEP that gave them extra time, or there needed to be modifications for Map of the Modern World in terms of how the material is being given, that's adjustments that the teaching fellow or the professor makes. But we do think about the IEP, and we speak with the co-teacher to see how is it done at the high school level and what adjustments do we need to make for that student.
And ultimately, it's up to the university teams to make that call, but they all have centers of accessibility and similar resources that they point students to. And I would say usually professors are very open to honoring those accommodations, or so I've seen in the last few years.
Is there any level of self-advocacy work within that context to ensure that students understand what they can and should ask for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's
In the post-secondary space is really what I'm talking about, once they graduate.
I know that like in terms of the course that they're taking, that's just entirely our model and something that we look to the co-teachers to really build that college-going skill of knowing how to ask for help and knowing how to advocate for yourself. And I've seen a lot of students rise to the occasion and directly email professors themselves, letting them know that, you know, they need this resource or they need something additional. Question back there.
So I'm April. I am with the School District of Philadelphia. So I have two data-related questions. The first one is that 84% is really impressive. And I'm wondering if you have any plans to track like actual enrollment as a result of a successful college completion.
Yes.
And then my second question is, I love all the coaching and everything too, and I'm also wondering if you have any data around the amount of time that's devoted to the students, because I think a lot of times people don't realize how much time it actually does take to walk students through the process of making a choice and all those things. And so I'm wondering if you would collect any of that kind of information for how much time is given to a student.
I'm trying to remember the first question.
84%.
So actual college enrollment after
Oh,
successful course completion.
Yeah, so we're still in very early stages and our pilot was in 2019, so we just had our first cohort of students go off to college, and we just got that data from the National Student Clearinghouse, and we're actually working on a longitudinal study right now with Bob Balfans and his team, so that data is in the works. And then for your second question, I don't think we currently have any data around that, but it's actually a really good suggestion and something that I'm going to take back to our team, so thank you.
Okay.
So here then.
Sure. Hey, I'm Doug from the Kansas City region. For the JFF team, a lot of the work is awesome around the federal and state policy. For those of us that are more place-based and thinking about work locally or within a region, are there proof points you can point to or strategies that can kind of work from the bottom up on kind of blurring the lines?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we've seen, and I'll give one example, Meredith may have more to add, in terms of some proof points more locally, creating strong partnerships between high schools and colleges, whether that's through dual enrollment, other areas where there's collaboration and partnership between districts, high schools, and employers as well, to provide work-based learning or early career exposure. So it's really starting there. And for us, when we think about the Big Blur, we realize and recognize that it is regional, it is community-based. So developing those relationships, if they're not already, exist, and strengthening those across systems, we think is like a really good starting place as well. Would you have anything to add, Meredith?
No, I mean, I think everything that Erica said is totally right, and at the local level, especially those community college and district relationships are super important. I know I was talking to someone from Texas, for example, earlier in the week, and they were saying, obviously it's a huge state, and so like their kind of blurriness really varies based off the region, and even more of a like microscopic view within the region. But really it all stems from what that relationship looks like between the district's community college and the district's K-12 system. And I think there's also a lot of really good apprenticeship programs and youth apprenticeship programs that kind of demonstrate what a local, successful type of blurring looks like.
Back here we have.
There was one over here, right?
Yeah.
I thought there was one over here.
So I think I've been really impressed with your program and how much you're increasing access, and the 84% is a great number, but I'm curious about like the other 16% when students are not passing. What does that mean? I mean, is it something that shows up on their high school transcript, or what kind of grade is that, or is it something where it's not actually showing on that?
So for dual enrollment, we leave the high school portion of the grade entirely up to the discretion of the schools, so they have full autonomy over that. For the university side, again, it depends on the university, but a lot of the schools that we work with have policies in place where the courses are no-risk courses or open scale courses, so if a student doesn't pass, it either turns into an audit status or it just doesn't show up and they don't get a transfer. There are certain cases where, you know, for some universities, they're not able to get to that space yet, but in those cases, you know, we generally work with students and we send them a weekly grade report so they know where they are, their teachers know where they are. We keep a very close eye on their data, and when that drop date is approaching and we see a student may not be on track, we definitely have a conversation with them about what needs to be done, so that they don't have that negative notation on their transcript.
So that, I'll just pop in here, that's actually Jenny's question. I'm Carla, I'm from Oregon, and that is right in line with my question, which is that for those students who don't pass, how does that then not only show up, but then how does that impact their eligibility for financial aid? Because we know that there's a limit of how many credits you can take when you're in high school, how many credits you can take that's eligible for financial aid, period. And so just wondering if that's been considered in your model. And then my second question is, what's the cost to districts? Like, is there a per pupil cost, or how does it pay for?
Yeah, I'll go to your second question first.
Maybe you already answered it.
So the cost is $250 per student per course. That's never billed to students or to families. The payment either comes from the schools or most of the times comes directly from the district. And there's a lot of federal stimulus funding that they've been able to allocate to that.
First question?
The financial aid piece of it. Have you had any conversation? I mean, I'm just, because, you know, there's, how many, is it 180 college, but there's a certain cap that you can take for college credit and still be eligible for federal financial aid. And so if you take a bunch of college credit while you're in high school that's not purposeful, that doesn't actually lend itself to a degree, or you change your mind, that still counts against your total eligibility, whether or not you actually used financial aid to pay for that.
Correct.
So I could take a 4-credit college class, never apply for financial aid for that particular class, and those 4 credits still count against my lifetime eligibility for federal financial aid for my bachelor's degree. So that's a real consideration for students in poverty, because if their whole college-going plan is dependent on being eligible for financial aid, it's a huge consideration. So I'm just wondering how much that coaching takes that into account.
How would that be different though than like if you take AP stuff, if you take a CC course in psych and you end up going to, I mean, in terms of elective, just them having the experience, I still would argue was far more valuable than, right? I mean, how many during your high school years take something that isn't applicable to your major, but still the value of the experience
regardless of the subject, I think in terms of readiness and preparation, all those components. Since we're not talking about 20 or 40 college credits, right, we're talking about 3 and.
Yeah, most of the time students are taking one course. We have a few students who have like double dipped and taken a course as a junior and a senior, and they've taken maybe 2 or 3, but they're not accumulating a significant amount of credits at all.
And I worked in financial aid a long time ago, so we were running to that where the students exceeded the 150%. That's the mark. 150%,
towards
right?
a grade, yep.
And so if students can come in and do a financial aid appeal and say, hey, these particular classes don't relate to my major, then it's up to the financial aid office to decide, okay, yeah, we want to take those out of the 150% calculation and recalculate it. So again, I've been out of financial aid for a long time. That is still what happens, but I know that at my university, when I was there, that's what we used to do. And again, it goes back to advocating and who's telling you those things. So it depends on who are the great people in the financial aid office, who's your academic advisor, how are you involved on campus, in hopes that someone's going to tell you that you have that option for yourself.
And just to, I think to add some clarity to that, all great points, right? And I always defer any financial aid knowledge to a former or current financial aid. Always defer. But the SAP requirements have changed, right? They've actually become a bit more rigid and restrictive. You know, at our institution, I mean, we've been again doing dual enrollment since the early '80s, and we have run into changes and challenges for students, particularly more recently. The goal really is to make sure that if students are going to do that they're successful in their classes, right? So the one way around it, and it's not really an around it, but they can still get the experience, but the point earlier around those, that 14% or 16% that don't succeed, if the course is now becoming an auditable non-credit course, then it does not impact SAT on the other end. So if all of your university partners aren't doing that, I would encourage you to get them all to do that so that it doesn't damage students on the other end.
Exactly, because the value is it's indispensable for them to have that experience.
Yeah.
But we don't want to hamstring them down the line if they are, you know, if they can't then pay for it. I didn't know it was the 150%. I thought it was a credit limit. So that's I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll defer to the financial.
Really good information though. Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Zia from Albuquerque, Mexico. I was curious, so you guys said that it's on a referral basis. I was wondering, do you guys do any work with the students who don't necessarily know to advocate or know how to advocate for themselves, or who also don't believe in themselves? 'Cause I work with students who do more like manual labor kind of stuff. They don't have the belief that they're going to be able to go to college or have access to that kind of stuff. So I was wondering what kind of work you guys do within those communities that might not necessarily be seen by the principals or directors.
I think that's the goal one day, to be able to go into each one of our schools or as many of our schools to speak directly to students, just knowing that we just came out of COVID, this is what happened. I'd say it's a challenge that over the last 2 years we haven't been able, I think at the beginning we've been able to go into some schools and speak directly to students, but at this moment we're relying on the school instructors, the teachers, the district team to select their students and
But I'd love to take your card and talk to you more about the students that you work with, because we definitely have had students just email us through our website and say, hey, like I saw you in the New York Times and I'd love to bring this to my school. And, you know, we set up a conversation with the principal and we make it happen, so we'd love to talk about it.
I think that's it.